good, YouTube? It's your boy Meh of Pig and Meh here. So, this past weekend, I decided to go to locals and managed to get top 4 with deck you see before you, Exosisters. Some insight. The reason I decided to play this deck is because this card finally came out. Exosister Magnifica in the new Dimension Force set, which I'll get to explaining her to you in a minute. But before I get to showing you guys the deck profile, let's kind of explain Exosisters in a nutshell. Alright, so Exosisters. Simply put, they're a series of level 4 light spellcaster type monsters who all have some incredibly low attack stats of 3, 4, 5, and 100 attack respectively. And they have the effect that if your opponent manipulates the graveyard in any way, shape, or form, hell, if they even look at it incorrectly. Oh, sorry. I shouldn't be using said word. Basically, they one card exceed summon into any of these cards before you. And then they all have associated effects that usually lock out something or do an action if they were exceed summon that turn using an Exosister. So, your main Exosisters come in pairs. There is Stella and Elise, and Irene and Sophia. So, these two share an effect that they'll let you draw a card. In the case of Sophia, all you have to do is control any Exosister monster. And in Irene's case, you don't have to control an Exosister, but you need to take an Exosister card from your hand and put it on the bottom of your deck. And then they share the effect that if you control the other sister when you did that effect, you gain 800 life points. Stella and Ellis here. Stella has the effect that once per turn you can special an Exosister from your hand, and Ellis has the effect that when you control an Exosister, you can special summon her from your hand. And again, when you prop their effect, if you control their sister, then you gain 800 life points for doing said effect. Pretty simple little resource loops and what have you. And, you know, fair and balanced card design. Their Exceed monsters over here are all level 4 light or rank 4 light warrior monsters that each have associated effects the turn they are exceed summoned using an Exosister. Astolfo here has the effect that your opponent can't use graveyard effects for that turn. Jabroni here, she acts as an infinite impermanence that she can target a monster and negate its effect on the field. Caspatel here has an effect that the opponent cannot special summon from the graveyard, and Mikalis here can target any card on the field and banish it. Pretty simple stuff. They all also happen to have effects just standard that they get from just detaching a material. Mikalis here is the most important one because she has any Exosister, spell, and trap from your deck to your hand. We'll get to those in a minute. Caspatel is the second most important one. She adds any of these Exosister monsters. So basically, you can use her to kind of get to Ellis a little faster. Jabreen and Astolfo, they're kind of nothing too spectacular. Jabreen here, she just boosts attack. I did that once. And Astolfo here can detach material to target a monster your opponent controls and return it to the hand. I think I did that one time for a game push. That's about it. All right. Now, the thing that makes the deck a lot better until the next set that gives them an additional extender that is insane is this card right here, Exosister Magnifica. She's made by using 2 of these rank 4s and putting them on top of each other. And then she simply put the turn that she's summoned. Well, actually, it's not even the turn that she's summoned. It's just in general. When your opponent activates a card, as a quick effect, you can detach a material to non-target banish card on their field. It's insane. She also has this really interesting effect that you can detach one of her materials But instead of it going to the graveyard, it goes into the extra deck, and then she proceeds to exceed summon using her and whatever associated materials that are on her into that card. So depending on how you kind of organize things, you can kind of put a lockout effect onto her if you have one of these ones, or you can get basically 2 banishes for 1 card. And the effect that was the absolute craziest is that she can attack twice, just in general. So I use that to push for a lot of damage all the time. This card was absolutely fantastic all day and makes the deck well worth playing, especially once the new set drops and they get that extra extender. So that's all of the Exosister monsters. Simply put, they're 1 card exceed summons, or they're supposed to be 1 card exceed summons that all have effects to lock out your opponent from their graveyard. Now, some of the associated spells and traps worth noting right now is Exosister Vadis, Exosister Arment, and Exosister Pax. These are the ones I opt to play. There are some other ones that aren't necessarily bad, but kind of not proactive in the game plan of this deck. Pax right here is the most important card of them all. For 800 life points, you get to add any one of these ladies to your hand. And if you happen to have the associated sister on the field or in the graveyard, you can special summon the added monster. That's nuts. Basically, she helps prop any of their effects, or it can act as a play starter to just get a sister in general. Really good card. Armament here on the opponent. You can only activate this on the opponent's turn unless they control a monster that was special summoned from the graveyard. This card just lets you exceed summon on their turn using any Exosister monster you control. So basically, you just have these right there on the ready for the specific situation you're running. It's an okay card, but nothing too spectacular. Vadis here was the card that overperformed all day, because this has the neat effect that you basically can take any set of sisters from your deck, special summon them to the field. If they're still on the field, they get shuffled back into during the end phase of the turn, and the turn you play this card, you are exclusively locked into only being able to special summon Exosisters. So what was neat is, in a lot of instances, I would activate this card when my opponent would do anything involving manipulating the graveyard, and then proceed to just interrupt their plays, because all of these Exosisters can just activate and turn themselves into different forms of a lockdown. Card was really good. I think everybody should play it. They will be getting a new trap here soon that I think is supposed to be like a Karma Cut or something, but I don't 100% remember off the top of my head. But essentially, that right there is Exosisters 101. They're a rank 4 toolbox deck that is supposed to lock out the graveyard effects of your opponent's cards. So let's get to the profile. Alright, so onto the deck profile. For Exosisters, you max out on all of them right now. 3 Ellis, 3 Stella, 3 Sophia, 3 Irene. I just wanted to see them, really simply put. Of course, ratios will change once new support comes out, or if you're doing different variations on the deck, but for now, in my version, I just maxed out on all of them. For extenders, I just played 2 copies of ZS Ascended Sage and 2 copies of Dinotherium. It's a wind, so you have something to automatically hit the wind barrier statue. And if you happen to control an Exosister, and your opponent for some reason decides to actually prop his effect to special summon from their graveyard, you could then prop your Exosister on board. It's really neat. Never happened. This guy is in here because he's a light. That'll be explained once we get to the side deck. You can also play the Charmer pets if you wanted, but this is just what I opted for. Alright, for hand traps, I just played Veiler, Ogre, Ash. Pretty simple cards. I cited any other hand traps that I thought I needed for other situations. Alright, So now onto the spells. You play, of course, triple packs and the 1 copy of the Armament. Pretty simple stuff. I play 1 copy of Utopia double or nothing. This is just because I wanted a free OTK button in the deck, and that helped me in 1 game. 1 copy of Zexal Field. This has the neat effect that when you Exceed summon, you can take an Exceed monster that's either in your graveyard or your extra deck and attach it to that monster as a material. So your Magnifica, you can kind of give her extra stuff, and also it can help chain block a bunch of other effects, but that really didn't appear too often. This card was kind of okay at best, but a neat tech worth considering. There's 1 copy of Mystic Mine. I never saw it all day, but I just kind of wanted it in there in case I needed it. And of course the 1 Terraforming to search out 1 of your 2 field spells. Next, just has some power spells called by Monster Reborn, Harpy's Feather Duster, and Upstart Goblin. This was an easy side out. You always want a main deck out in case you're locked under Mystic Mine. This is just extenders because most of your cards just exhaust resources, and it's pretty good. And Called By is just Called By the Grave. Now for traps, I just opted to run the double Goddess and the triple copy of Infinite Impermanence. You could play more traps if you wanted. I've done it in the past. It's really good. I just opted for kind of a deck that just kind of pushes out a lot more cards and uses hand traps to control the situation instead, because I wasn't quite sure what the situation was going to be at locals. On to the extra deck. Of course, you play the 2 copies of Magnifica. This card is excellent. 1 Astafil, 1 Jabroni. These are just kind of utility ones. You could bump them up if you wanted, but your extra deck space is a little tight, and I opted to play certain tech cards that you'll see. 3 copies of Mikalis. This is easily the 2nd most important one in the whole extra deck. I would not really consider cutting 1, but if you absolutely had to, you can get away with 2. I just highly recommend playing 3. And then, of course, 2 copies of Caspatel. Probably the 2nd most important one because she just kind of gets you your combo pieces and gets you going. Alright. Now the 1 flex spot in the whole deck, and the reason I play the 1 brick, is I play the Utopia double package. Simply put, I just wanted a free OTK and an excuse to use this CR. That's it. This could be a lot of other things, to be honest with you, and I think everyone should explore all the possibilities. And of course, as I accidentally spoiled, because you're playing an Exceed deck, of course you play the 1 copy of Divine Arsenal Double Jesus. I did not use it once today, though. I also did not use any of these Exceed monsters. They all happen to be spellcasters, by the way, so you could, in theory, hard make this card. I literally never ran into a scenario where I felt the need to Exceed summon, so I just didn't do any of that. Now, onto my really, really janky side deck. Like I told you, I was siding appropriate hand traps depending on what was going to happen. So that's kind of the majority of explanation for all these. If I thought I needed Bell, I'd put Bell in. If I thought I needed a Crow, I'd put Crow in. Token Collector would be absolutely cracked if there was any Sword Soul players. Lancia was good in the Fluandaweeze matchup. And then the last hand trap I cited, pretty much almost exclusively as a troll, is the 1 copy of Ghost Sister and Spooky Dogwood, because she's a nun. You know, last beat. If you ever go into time. Alright. Next up, I also cited 3 copies of Cosmic Cyclone. It was absolutely fantastic when I was going against Mech Knights of all decks. So, yeah. And then the last card I cited, and part of the reason I played the Utopia guys, was 3 copies of Gozen Match. Surprisingly, it can kind of stop a Fluandaweeze player's day if all they have is the Wabina on board, because this says, no, you don't get to Eagle Win or do anything else. Part of me almost wants to main deck it and build an even more stun-focused version of this deck, but I don't know. It's kind of neither here nor there. There you have it, folks. Blessed be in the name of the heavenly spirits. My Exosister deck profile. Some final thoughts. This deck has new support on the horizon. That'll make it even better. But right now, it's a pretty solid deck to play. You can have a lot of fun with it, and I really like the cards. If you like what you see, make sure to comment down below, like, favorite, all that jazz. Any improvements, text, whatever that you feel that I should try out in the future, feel free to let me know. Otherwise, this is Pig and Meh, signing out.